I really don't know what made me want to be a lawyer. There was no lawyers in the family, and when it came to going to university, it was a question of choosing a course, and I honestly don't know why law appealed to me. My father had very high expectations for both me and my brother. He came from a working class background. His father was a miner, and he was a highly intelligent man who did very well at university himself, and he was determined that we would all succeed at the opportunities that we had. And I have one older brother, he's 2 years older than me, and my parents couldn't have afforded for both of us to be away. So the fact that he hated boarding school meant that I was able to go. So I went to Cheltenham Ladies' College. I left Cheltenham when I was 15. My father, who I now realise was probably having a little bit of a thin time in his career, went to see the headmistress and asked her whether, I was likely to get good A-levels. In other words, was his money being wisely spent? And she said that she didn't feel that I was going to get A-levels or good A-levels, and no, he probably was wasting his money. So I went to a co-ed grammar school in Melton Mowbray, straight from Cheltenham Ladies' College, which you can imagine was something of a culture shock, not least to have boys in the same class. And in fairness to them, not having quite the same level of education that was available at Cheltenham, but I did get my A-levels. And then went to university in Cardiff, where my parents had both been students at Cardiff University, so it was maintaining a family tradition. I set out to become a barrister when I was first at Cardiff. I'd been brought up on a diet of Perry Mason on the television. I thought this was terribly exciting, and that you rushed into court and solved a case in 5 minutes just by sheer power of intellect and the extraordinary last piece of evidence that nobody thought about. And I went into it with that idea, but I subsequently discovered that the parts of the law that I really enjoyed were actually more suited to being a solicitor. I went for an interview for what were then articles of clerkship at the biggest firm in Swansea, where I was then living with my parents, and that was quite an interesting experience because there were two men being interviewed at the same time. I was interviewed by the senior partner, and I was with him for about 2 hours, and he grilled me in detail. He was a supremely intelligent man, and he grilled me on all 6 of the heads of study in the Law Society finals, 3 of which I hadn't actually touched yet. Then I was taken to a room on my own with a blank sheet of paper and a moneylender's agreement, and I was asked to redraft the moneylender's agreement in accordance with the Consumer Credit Act. I had no books, nothing, just what was ever in my head. The 2 men who were interviewed at the same time, certainly one of them I spoke to afterwards, he had about 15 minutes chatting to one of the partners about rugby, and the senior partner stuck his head round the door and asked him when he could start. I must in fact have done better than I thought, because they did offer me articles of clerkship, as they were then called, and I was the first woman to be articled in that firm. I was there for about a year as a qualified solicitor, and then my husband, who was in partnership with his brother, they had a senior partner who became very ill just at the time that they were opening a second office, and the senior partner should have gone into the second office, but because he became ill, I was asked to go and open this office for my husband's firm, which again was quite a challenge because I was there on my own with one secretary, and I was only 26 at the time. And when the clients would come in and I would collect them from the waiting room, they would look past me to see where the solicitor was. The thing that I really had enjoyed as part of that work was being a ex officio, a hospital manager of any of the psychiatric hospitals in the area. And so we did hospital managers' hearings which meant that it was a junior version of the Mental Health Tribunal. So when people are first detained in hospital, they appeal to the hospital managers. If the hospital managers don't let them out, then they go to the tribunal, or they have the opportunity to go to the tribunal. So I thought that that was part of the work that I'd really enjoyed. So I applied to join the tribunal. And so my tribunal work essentially goes from that role. All the hearings are in psychiatric hospitals or wherever the patient happens to be, because by definition, the patient is not allowed to leave that building to come to a court or anywhere else. So the hearings are largely in hospitals or in some sort of community setting if it's a community patient. And there is a judge chairing the hearing. There's a consultant psychiatrist who's a member of the panel, and also a lay member. And between the three of us, we have to decide whether the patient still fulfills the criteria for detention under the Act. I could see that there were some interesting roles to be had there and some interesting things to do. And because of the way that my practice had developed, we had merged with a much bigger firm, which was right for the clients, but there was no obvious role for me. And so I felt that I wanted to expand my experience in various ways. And it was about the time that I joined the tribunal as well, so that I was doing some tribunal work. I did a year as a consultant in the merged firm, but I wanted to be doing something more interesting, something on a wider scale. Being an office holder of the Law Society is a huge commitment. And I think that a lot of the women on council found themselves at a point in their career where they simply couldn't take the time out to do it. I was very fortunate that it coincided with a period of my career when I was making changes anyway. So I had time to do it, whereas a lot of women, if they'd taken what amounted to almost 3 years out, it would have made a huge dent in their career, which was very hard fought for. And they didn't feel probably that they could do it. It was definitely not a deliberate point that I was trying to make, because it's not the way that my brand of feminism works. I don't do things to make a point. I do things because I want to do them. If I turn out to be the first woman who's done it, then that's great. But that's almost by coincidence. The role of the president is to articulate the view that's been arrived at by council. And if you have a president who has a personal agenda which is at odds with the will of council, then you've got problems. And so I didn't go into it with a personal agenda. There were various issues going on at the time, and I was happy to do my best to pursue those issues, one of which, coincidentally, was the creation of the Judicial Appointments Commission. And I was astonished to find, Cheltenham Ladies' College had never had a female chair of governors, which I find extraordinary. The principals had all been women, but the chair of governors had always been a man, which seemed to be an extraordinary message to send, that a woman could run the school, but only if overseen by a man. That seemed a bizarre message for an institution like Cheltenham Ladies' College. It's, I think, probably the thing of which I'm most proud in my career, more than the other things that I've done, because it just has helped so many people who otherwise wouldn't have had the support. We've just expanded into the area of children and young people, which is a very under-supported area and a very tricky area to support children who are either suffering from cancer or family members suffering from cancer. And it just seems an extremely worthwhile thing to do. And everybody involved in the charity is just brilliant, and I'm very proud of it.